Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Area Planning Committee today, Thursday, the 20th of June, 2024. For the benefit of the public, I'm Councillor Dave Bolwell, Chair of this committee, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Chris Kippax. The meeting is being live streamed, and the recording will also be available to view on the website after the meeting. By attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. Can I remind everyone that when you are speaking, please speak directly into the microphones so that you can be clearly heard. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the Chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. And those using Teams on your laptops, please ensure your microphones are on mute and your device volume is set to 0 to maintain audio quality and prevent distractions during the meeting. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. We have 7 applications to determine today. The case officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite councillors and members of the public who have registered to speak to address the committee. Each speaker has 3 minutes. Following this, the committee members will be given the opportunity to put questions of a technical nature to the planning officer before we move to our debate. I do hope everyone has taken the time to look at the notes and the briefings on these particular applications. Firstly, I will conduct a roll call of members present. Chris Kippax. Thank you. Belinda Borden, good morning. Simon Christopher. Neil Lysenk. Good morning, Neil. Paul Kimber. Good morning, Paul. Craig Monks. Good morning, Craig. David Northam. Morning, David. Louis O'Leary. Morning, Louis. Pete Roper. Morning, Pete. David Shortell. Good morning, David. And Kate Weller. Good morning, Kate. Secondly, I'd like to introduce the officers involved in today's meeting. They include Anne Collins, Development Management Area Manager. Morning, Anne. Phil Crowther, Legal Business Partner Regulatory. Morning, Phil. Morning. Katrina Trevitt, Development Management Team Leader. Morning, Katrina. James Litton-Trevis, Lead Project Officer, who's not here yet, hope he will be. Nicola Yates, Conservation and Design Officer. Rob Piggott, Planning Officer. Rob Parr, Planning Officer. Elaine Tibble, Senior Democratic Services Officer. And Josh Kennedy, Democratic Services Officer. Moving on to the agenda, firstly, apologies, and there are none that I'm aware of. No, okay. Declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations of interest? Right. Councillor Kimber?
Yes, Chair. I know the applicant on 5G, and I will not take part in the actual debate and the vote. But as ward councillor, I will have made a request via yourselves to speak. Was it for 3 minutes? For 3 minutes on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. That's noted. The others, please.
Sorry, okay, thank you. Sorry. Item 5A, I spoke previously on this. I will not be speaking again, and I will remove myself to the far side of the room during the application and remove myself from the room when the debate starts.
Lovely, thank you, Kate. Councillor Louis O'Leary, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on from what Councillor Weller just said, I also spoke when this item came up at a previous planning committee meeting. Can I just ask the solicitor where I stand on the matter then?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a deferral of the item that came before members at the last committee, I understand. So a member who spoke as a committee member at the last meeting is not predetermined simply by having taken part in this meeting, as long as you come to this meeting with an open mind, ready to hear everything. If members made statements before that last meeting which indicated that they were predetermined, then that would be an issue. But for members who spoke at the last committee when this was deferred, simply by being a member of this committee, it wouldn't amount to predetermination. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor O'Leary, are you happy with that? Yes. Okay, thank you. And there was one other, I think. Oh, Councillor Roper.
Apologies, Chair. Agenda item 5G. Portland Sculpture and Quarry Trust provided an overview of their work to Portland Town Council for council meeting last night. I did not participate in the councillors' questions, and there was no vote at the end of the presentation. So therefore, I'm not predetermined on this application.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Roper. And Councillor Northam.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Councillor Northam, up Weyham Broadway, and I spoke on the 18th of April as a member of Weymouth Town Council at the meeting. I've been advised that I am predetermined. I have asked to speak again, and I will be speaking as a member of Weymouth Town Council, and I'll move across and then disappear, apparently. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, councillors. If there are no more, I'll move on to item 3, which is minutes, to agree and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of April 2024. If there are no questions or corrections, then I will sign the minutes at the end of the meeting. That seems fine, no problems. Thank you very much. Item 4 on the agenda, members of the public registered to speak can take this opportunity to speak now if they wish, or wait for their item to be presented. Each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. Just a reminder for the benefit of the members of the public and councillors listening, can members please state their name and ward when addressing the meeting. Planning applications. We now move on to planning applications. The first one is item 5A. Before we begin, I think Councillor Northam has already moved. Thank you very much. And Councillor Weller is also moving as well. Thank you, Kate. Can I I need to get it introduced first, Councillor Northam. Thank you. So we move to 5A, planning applications. We're looking at P/MPO/2023/03270, phases 2 to 4, Curtis Fields, land south of Chickerell Road, Weymouth, DT4 0TR, introduced by James Litton-Trevis. James?
Good morning. This application, as we've already mentioned, was deferred from the April meeting. At that meeting, it was considered, and the committee wished the council to explore with the applicant whether any issues could be resolved to satisfy the affordable housing provision. The minutes cover what was discussed at that meeting, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I will explain the application once again, as I did then, and then at the end I will comment on what feedback we've had from the applicants. So the original report is unchanged, and that's an appendix at the end of this update report, and that's what I am referring to. So this application is not as such a development proposal, but a variation to an existing legal agreement, a Section 106 agreement. A Section 106 agreement which required the provision of 30% affordable housing as well as a number of financial contributions. The only thing that's sought today is a reduction from the 30% affordable provision to 26.24%. As a consequence, there aren't any plans to look at, but I will just explain what this is about. To put it into context, Curtis Fields is a large allocation in Weymouth brought forward in phases, but we're only looking at phases 2 to 4, which is the area outlined in red on that plan there. Blue land includes the entire development, all the phases. The northern part that you see, the blue land, is pretty much built, and parts of 2 to 4 also. And then this plan shows the allocation of affordable housing. That's the yellow, and the red is probably difficult to see, but the yellow would be the shared equity, and the red is the affordable rent housing, and that's what's proposed, the provision within the phases 2 to 4. So the main issue is really the reduction from 30% to 26.24%. So the applicant contends that the development has been affected by abnormal costs, mainly asbestos contamination. So the applicant's prepared a report about those abnormal costs, and we referred that to the district valuer. The district valuer is an independent, without bias to the applicant nor the council, assessor of the facts and the figures. As a consequence of that approach, the district valuer raised queries with the applicant's report, and then negotiations were carried out between the district valuer and the applicants, and the district valuer prepared the final report. That report is available, and it's quite detailed and contains lots of figures. Obviously, I haven't reproduced all of it because it's quite complicated, but in my report, from paragraphs 1510, I have put in the main bits of it, which explains his reasoning. I'm not going to read that out. You could have read that. Suffice to say, the district valuer surmises that the development is not viable to deliver all of the affordable housing. He considers that the abnormal site costs, plot costs, that's the building the houses, cut and fill and so on, are reasonable and not inflated. At paragraph 15.7 in my report, the district valuer suggested it is somewhat surprising the abnormal site costs have come to light at this stage, as the site was undeveloped and that due diligence would have been taken at the application stage. The abnormal site costs are a significant factor. So from that, the district valuer has worked out what the scheme could deliver. And although the applicant claimed that a number of contributions could not be delivered, those are financial contributions which are in my report, those can still be met, and the applicant does not contest those. The district valuer deduces that 26.24% could be delivered of the affordable instead of 30. So that equates to 122 affordable dwellings instead of 140, so a loss of 18. I'll just return to those abnormal site costs, and these are some of them on the screen before you. I think you can make of those what you will. I'll just pause just so that you can have a quick look. I don't want to draw anything specific to your attention. So about those, and this is direct from the district valuer's report, and I'll read this out because I read it out last time, so I'll read it out again. I would initially observe that I'm a valuation surveyor and not a quantity surveyor, and so I'm not qualified to advise on these matters in detail. I can only provide high-level observations in respect of abnormal cost items. My observation is that the issues relating to the majority of these costs appear commensurate with the site and narrative relating to site conditions. It is somewhat surprising, however, that additional unforeseen costs relating to asbestos and ground conditions, cut and fill, retaining walls and groundworks have come to light at this stage of the development, especially in the context of the site being previously undeveloped. It is reasonable to assume that appropriate due diligence would have been carried out in the early stages of the project and detailed ground investigations undertaken. It's also noted that there is limited narrative in the Chester's Harcourt report relating to these costs. The Chester's Harcourt report was the applicant's report, and no supporting ground investigation or other technical reports have been made available. Just a few things to just capture. The developer is entitled to make a profit. The district valuer did look at what is a reasonable profit in reaching his deductions. The district valuer based it on 17.5% residential value as a reasonable profit level. It normally hovers between 15 to 20%. The district valuer took the median of 17.5%. And we do not know who the registered provider, that's the social housing registered provider, would be at this point in time to deliver these houses, all these dwellings. Which brings me to the recommendation. Sorry, no, it doesn't come in with the recommendation because I haven't told you what the applicant has said. So we went back to the applicant at the request of the committee to see whether the 30% could be delivered in some other way or by other means. So a negotiation was proposed. The applicant, I've quoted directly from the applicant's response on page 37, over onto page 38. The applicant states that, well, we've carried out a negotiation. The district valuer carried out a negotiation with their assessors, and we've already done that. And the district valuer has come to the conclusion that 26.24% is all that can be delivered because the scheme isn't viable. I'll just read from page 37, paragraph 3.3. The applicant states that this application is not aimed at avoiding the provision of affordable homes. It is simply an industry standard, an MPPF compliant procedural request for the Section 106 terms to be reconsidered and modified to reflect unforeseen and abnormal development costs. It would be helpful if officers could remind members that Betterment Properties have already delivered a large number of affordable homes at Curtis Fields and made substantial payments to fund other community benefits, and that's true. None of this would be possible without Betterment's investment, which also makes significant contributions to the Council's housing land supply target. In this instance, as the DVS, or District Valuer, has advised, the Council, a modest reduction in the affordable housing quota is demonstrably valid and reasonable. Betterment, like any other development, simply expects a reasonable return for that initiative, endeavour and risk, and should not be required to offer options. So it brings me to the recommendation. The recommendation is to approve the reduction of 18 dwellings of 26.24% affordable housing and to delegate authority to the Head of Planning and Service for Development Management Enforcement to apply the modification of the Section 106 agreement subject to a deed of modification to secure 26.24% affordable housing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, James. I will now call the first speaker is Councillor Claire Sutton. You have 3 minutes, Claire.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for hearing me first because I've got to escape to another meeting. Councillor Claire Sutton, Robble and Wyke Ward in Weymouth, which isn't the location of this proposal, but it's immediately adjacent, which is why I felt I needed to say a few words. Given what Betterment originally sought, this is obviously improvement on that, and obviously the involvement of the district valuer is in that instance very welcome. However, I do worry about, I'd have some concerns about the cost to the public purse of actually having to go down that route in the first place. So what the district valuer came back with was actually really close to the original proposal. So this all feels like a somewhat daft exercise to my inexpert eye, and the abnormal site costs, which have just been shown on the screen, don't look to me anything like a deal breaker. I think there's an important question of principle here, and of setting an example to other developers, you know, given our very, very acute need for affordable housing across the whole county. So since developers clearly, you know, they do their homework, don't they? That's their business, and they make additional profit when the market is in their favour. So surely they should equally, if there is a very small projected loss, that they should also take that, you know, if that's how it comes about. Therefore, it seems pretty clear to me, you know, the loss of 18 affordable dwellings is really significant, isn't it? So. Really, they should be delivering the scheme that's originally agreed, the full 30%, affordable. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sutton. I'd now like to introduce Councillor David Northam. You have 3 minutes, David. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Some of what I'm saying has been said, but I'll try and emphasise the points. I raised concerns on the... So I'm speaking here as a Weymouth Town Council member and not as a Dorset Council member. I raised concerns on the 18th of April about this development. I felt it was wrong that the developer was allowed to take profit on earlier phases, but not take these into account on final phases. I was concerned that this would set a precedent for multi-phase developments which received permission for the whole development, but then could argue each phase of that development. I noted that the members' discussion queried the abnormal costs presented in the district valuer's assessment, and I thought this was to be the basis for further discussion with the developer. These abnormal costs, as you've seen, total 20 million, with only 483,000 attributable to asbestos remediation. So this statement that it's due to asbestos, well, that's, somebody do the percentage, that's a 40th of the amount, so that's 2.5%. I also note that the valuer's report did not accept these costs as reasonable. That's at paragraph 9.2. Further, in 9.4, it's noted that it is surprising that additional unforeseen costs have come to light at this late stage, especially in the context of the site being previously undeveloped. And it goes on to say, no supporting ground investigation or other technical reports have been made available to justify those abnormal costs. Finally, it says that the abnormal costs, however, are a potentially significant factor affecting the viability of the scheme. So I'm disappointed to hear from the officer that Betterment Properties would not enter into discussion with the council. And I would ask members to explore the validity of these abnormal costs, which make the final phases only viable for 26%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Northam. I think you're okay to leave the room now, as agreed. Thank you, David. Right, members, are there any relevant questions of a technical nature for the officer before we go to debate? And please make sure they are technical and don't start the debate yet. Thank you. Councillor Kimber.
Chair, I just wanted to, after the district valuer looked at this, he said, am I correct in saying it as 17% profit? Or did I get that wrong?
17.5. 17.5, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Any more questions of a technical nature? This is your opportunity to question the figures if you wish. Yes, Councillor Isink.
So, Councillor Isink, Egerton Ward. I just had a quick query around paragraph 15.14. You reference the MPPF paragraph 58, and you specifically say that requires a viability assessment at the application stage. And I was just wanting to clarify whether that's relevant in this case, because to me, we're significantly past the application stage.
Thank you for that. I'll leave the officer to answer that one.
I don't think the MPPF requires it at the application stage. So we've effectively, though of course the MPPF wasn't in force when the original application was made, which is of some relevance. I don't think at that time there was any requirement for an applicant to justify development costs and so on and so forth. But it's not unreasonable for me to now apply paragraph 58, and that's the context in which I'm making reference. So there is some policy background that supports that stance.
Thank you for that, James. Any other questions of a technical nature before we move to debate? Right, could members please state their name and ward when they put their hands up? Thank you very much. Well, actually, not quite when you put your hands up. Nobody want to start the debate? Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Paul Kimber, Portland. We're looking at a site that for some years ago, this went through a major public inquiry. And I think we all know how precious this piece of land is, and we all know how precious it is having and wanting homes for our youngsters. I believe that the loss of 18 starter homes will mean 18 families not being able to get onto that road to owning their own home. I'm experiencing it in my family, and I experience it at my surgeries. People saying to me, what have I got to do to be able to afford a home? And so I think today we're in a very, very difficult quandary. And I find it difficult to accept that there's room to manoeuvre even with a 17.8 profit within that margin, that we can't actually get some of those starter homes down. I can understand the developer has got to make a profit. However, I believe that we should and could and still push to get more of those starter homes. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Councillor Borden.
Thank you, Chairman. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. Obviously, my ward is not necessarily very close to this one. However, I think there is a general concern. I have felt in the short time I've been on Dorset Council a cross-party desire to do more for social and affordable housing. We've heard of various stories across both Dorset Council itself in difficulty recruiting staff because people can't afford to live here, and the need to provide housing for our own population is apparent in every part of the county and indeed, the rest of the country. But we have particular pressures being a popular coastal area and holiday homes. And like Councillor Kimber, my family's experienced problems trying to find anywhere to live. So, and I think, you know, in more recent meetings, again, there seems to be a cross-party consensus across the floor that really we do need to stand firm and say if developers have agreed to a 30% affordable percentage, then we should stick to it. And as Councillor Sutton has said, 18 homes is 18 homes, and our waiting lists are huge. And I think we should be seen to be doing the right thing in terms of our local population in trying to provide the housing that is so desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Borden. Is there anybody else who'd like to join the debate? Councillor Louis O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Louis O'Leary, Little Orme Preston Ward. I agree with my colleagues from what they've said. I remember when this came before us last time. If betterments are forced to hold firm to their original commitment, they're still going to be making a very, very nice profit on this development. I am not against profit whatsoever. I think profit is in what many ways makes this country tick and what makes the world go round. I'm not against that. But what I am against is people not keeping to their word and keeping to an agreement. It's already been said this sets a dangerous precedent, a precedent which in some ways is already set. We see it on a number of occasions, developers coming back saying, I'd like to change this and change that because it's no longer viable. But their profit margin is the only thing that is really changed. So therefore, oh dear, I'm sounding like a socialist. So therefore, I will be remaining in my firm position that I do not agree with allowing them to go back on this. So.
Yes, thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Any other members wish to comment?
So Neil, I think, Egerton Ward. I'd just like to make a couple of points, really. Firstly, in relation to the keeping betterment to the 30% target, I'm concerned that if we set the principle of flexing downwards, I don't understand why that wouldn't necessarily work the converse way as well. And if we say we're happy to flex downwards if unfavourable conditions are found on site, surely it would hold equally true that in theory we could then flex upwards if favourable conditions are found on site. And so I can't see how I can personally square those two together. I'd also just like to draw my fellow councillors' attention to some research I did in relation to publicly available documents online for Betterment's financial statements, which were signed off in February this year. There doesn't seem to be any mention of any unforeseen costs in relation to major projects there. From my own background in finance, I would have thought that if there were substantial unforeseen costs, they would be reflected in the notes to the financial statements, either as an impairment or as a post-balance sheet event. Given that there's nothing stated specifically there, I'm struggling to reconcile why Betterment are saying on the one hand they've had substantial extra costs that have been unforeseen, and yet their financial statements don't seem to reflect the fact that they would think that they were large unforeseen costs. So I'd be interested to know whether Betterment could provide additional information just around that, just to clarify the apparent discrepancy between the two. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Isank. Councillor Monks, please.
Thank you, Chair. Craig Monks, Bedminster Ward. Obviously, as you'll be aware, Chair, I'm a newer member of this committee, but have been following this as a West Dorset resident. So I feel that I'm fairly on page with the application. I just want to firstly thank the officer for his report and recommendations. My concern echoes at all other members in that I understand the recommendations as they are, but I struggle to really, like my previous colleague there, sort of come to the conclusion that we should automatically accept them. And in part, my concern comes from what appears to be the way I interpret the report. as I describe, a lack of engagement in negotiation, along with the concerns or the observations that were raised by the independent report. That, for me, is an issue, because if there was active negotiation and a thorough, a strong report that said there was no other option, then I would lean towards the officer's recommendations, because the framework is the framework, but that information is lacking, and I know that for me it's lacking, and I know that previous committee wanted to seek that information. So I don't see that we've been able to move any further for this committee to make a further informed decision. So that's why I would probably lean towards my councillors that have spoken already. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Monks, for that. Could I just ask Anne Collins if there's any comments you'd like to make on these financial affairs, and their relevance? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, essentially, the viability report that Betterman puts to us, obviously it has been examined by the DVS, as James commented, as have members commented. To a certain extent, we do have to take it on face value. We have limited capacity, sort of ability to be able to probe too deeply. We wouldn't expect our applicants to, we expect our applicants to be telling us the truth about their costs, etc. All I can really reinforce is obviously they've given that information to us. It's been assessed independently. There was a negotiation that took place, as James has referenced, between Betterment and the DVS, which has got us from sort of 0% to 26.24%. And, I hear members point about it, 18 dwellings is 18 dwellings, and I hear that, but we are very close to kind of that original 30%, given where we could have been. So there has been some negotiation. I just wanted to really emphasise that point, Chair.
Phil Crowther would like to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add on to what Ms. Collins said about what's been done. I understand that. I hope I'm not putting words into members' mouths, but the tone of the debate is you find it slightly distasteful that the developer is coming back now with additional abnormal costs that weren't identified at the start. That is a matter that wouldn't form the basis, that on its own wouldn't form the basis for a proper reason for a decision. Had the developer done that work at the start, those costs would have come out at the start, and this information would have been before you when the application first came before members. So it's not that pure, why is it only coming out now, isn't a consideration that you can take into account. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Yes, James, you want to come back on that?
So I thought it would be helpful to clarify that the applicant initially sought 0 contributions, financial contributions, and 0 affordable housing. And as a result of the negotiation with the district valuer, all the contributions have been retained, and we've gone from, as say Mrs. Collins said, from 0% affordable to 26.24. In my report, and I'll just share the screen of the page, it's on page 45, but I've put it on the screen, if I can find the way to do it. So on page 45, these are the contributions which are still being maintained. They're quite significant, £4.5 million. So the applicant are not contesting that any longer. And the breakdown of that is there on the screen. It's quite small, isn't it? There's recreation, transport, ecology, education. And there's so that sum equates to £4.5 million.
Yes, thank you, James. Councillor Monks, No? Was there anybody else that wished to speak at this stage? You do. Yes. I'll pass over to my Vice Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Kippax. Yep, Mr Ward. I'm not sure whether this is a technical question or a more general debating point, but I'm interested to know what the consequences of a decision not to accept this proposal would be.
Thank you for that, Chris. I'll pass over to Anne Collins on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Like any application coming before us, a planning application, although it's an application to modify the lease agreement, if members refused it today, and obviously members would have to come up with a material planning reason to do so, but if members were minded to refuse it today, the applicant would have a right of appeal. I can't say what method that appeal would take. It could end up at something like a public inquiry because of the need to probe financial information. So there may be obviously associated costs around planning officer and potentially legal advocate and paying for DVS or other professional advice as part of that appeal procedure. And as always, potentially if it was considered by the planning inspectorate that the council had acted unreasonably in refusing the modification, we could be liable for costs. The kind of same as anything where we look to refuse permission for something. So members just need to be mindful of that as a chain of consequences that can happen as a result of decisions.
Yes, thank you for that, Anne. It does beg the question whether there's something we should look at for the future. Like the members in the chamber, I'm also quite distressed by the constant repetition of this particular act, that affordable is always the consequence of, not making enough profit. Anybody else wish to speak on this one? Councillor David Shortell.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a shame, really, that these instances do come up because, of course, it means that there have to be much more diligence in assessing the costs for the developer when they're bidding for an application. And perhaps they haven't covered that in depth. There must have been an insufficient study of the lands involved before they actually put their costs in. And I think that's a bit of a shame. And I think if we're willing to accept that all the time, then that will set a precedent for other developments. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. Right, if there's no more debate, I think it's time to look for a proposal from members, please. Don't be shy. Councillor Monks, you wish to have one more question? Is that what you're looking for?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Monks, Bemis Ward. Just a quick question, perhaps for officers to help me understand the reasonableness of the amendment. So I know in the report, the suggestion is it's reasonable to as a profit margin with the amendment of 7.5%, I think it was. I may well have missed this, but was the profit margin modelled maintaining 30% affordable housing? And if it was, would that also be considered reasonable? Thank you.
Can I pass over to James on that one? I think I know what he's going to say, but I shan't put words in his mouth.
If I understood the question correctly, what the district valuer has done is, with his conclusions from the negotiation with Chester's Harcourt, the applicant's assessors, the district valuer has calculated for us, on the basis of 17.5% profit on the open market housing, 8% on the affordable profit, that's the developer's split, so it's 8% affordable, 17.5 open market. He has then calculated what the scheme could deliver, and that equated to the 26.24%. And if that's what you meant by your question.
Is that okay, Councillor Monks?
Yeah, Chair, thank you for that. I asked the question because obviously taking the advice from legal with response to what would happen if this was refused, I'm just trying to preempt Council's position because my feeling is members are feeling that they're leaning towards not wanting to, suggest approval. So then, for me, it goes back to what would the affordability and reasonable affordability look like should the 30% be maintained? Because if it was still considered reasonable, and I know in legislation and law, reasonable is a fantastic word that has a very open meaning, it may well give us more confidence to make a decision today, or perhaps ask further questions for a further meeting, just to put that out there too.
Thank you, Councillor Monks. I think, are you trying to say what would the profit margin be if the full amount of affordable housing was delivered on this application? And I'm not sure whether that is allowable to be asked or whether the figures are actually available. I'll pass you back to James.
They are available in the District Valuer's report. However, I would need to go away and go through it because it's a long report and it's quite complicated and it's not an easy answer for me to just find from the top of my head. But all the facts and figures are in the District Valuer's report, which is available as a public document. It's not private, so.
Thank you, James. I'm not sure it quite answers the question at the moment, but I do understand the dilemma you're in. Councillor Monks, is this going to be a deal breaker for you without this information?
Chair, I'm conscious that as I said before, I am one of the newer members, so I'd be quite happy to lean on more seasoned councillors as well. But for me personally, I would suggest that I don't have enough information to make an informed decision today, because if the answer to my question, and I'm going to frantically try and scroll through documents as well as our colleague here to try and find that answer, but if the answer to my question is that affordable, I'll carry on. If 30% affordable housing can still be maintained with a profit margin that this council considered to be reasonable, then I would lean towards refusal. But I don't want to make that decision without that information, personally. But I would welcome any other comments on that. I hope council understands where I'm coming from.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Monks. I think we may, unless there's an answer forthcoming, take a short adjournment because give James a chance to look through and Anna a chance to look through, and also perhaps deal with the building noise. So if members are happy with that, I'll just adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. Thank you. Anne, please.
Sorry, Chair. I was just also going to clarify, just found the relevant extract from the government's planning practice guidance, which is under gov.uk guidance viability. For the purpose of, well, it's talk about plan making, but equally it can apply to assessment of planning applications. An assumption of 15 to 20% of gross development value may be considered a suitable return. So I think here we've got a 17.5. So it's kind of that halfway house between the lower and the upper, hence why the district valuers adopted that figure for context. So just want to give members that context, but I appreciate you're looking to adjourn anyway.
Yes, thank you, Anne. I think my question would be the same as Councillor Monks. Would that 2.5% actually deliver the 18 houses we needed? Without knowing the overall value of the scheme and the costs, etc., I think it's a perfectly reasonable question, considering you just said 15 to 20%. And the valuer has gone for 2.5% more than what would be considered reasonable. So anyway, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes and perhaps give you a chance to look for that. And we'll turn the noise down. If anybody needs a comfort break, by all means, take it now. Thank you.
Hi, Simon, can you hear us? No, I don't think we can. I don't know if we can speak to him off camera.
Right, thank you everybody for returning. I'll just look to Anne Collins or James to see if there was an answer to the question from Councillor Monks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We haven't got a strict answer to the question because the ZVS effectively did his own appraisal, analysing each of the assumptions that the developer's assessor had made. And when he ran the figures through, the best he could get to in terms of the development breaking even, but including 17.5% profit for the developer, was the 26.424 put before you now. So what he didn't actually do for us is say, well, if it was 30%, this is how much the profit would have to reduce by. So we know that for the market housing, the developers would make a profit of 17.5%, and the DVS, he says he's adopted that level of I would also note that Betterman's assessor had adopted 20%. So again, we've adopted a lower profit margin than they have on the basis that in his previous work, because he does do quite a lot of work within Dorset Council's area in terms of looking at these kind of applications, he considers it 17.5 to be a reasonable target profit level. And he's also based that on our policy, that our assumptions document underpinning our policy requirements talks about 17.5% developers' profit. And he's adopted 6% development profit for the registered providers for the affordable housing. So we know that if the developer was to move from 17.5% profit to 15%, which is the minimum amount the government talks about as being an appropriate level, obviously that would release some additional money for affordable housing. But what unfortunately I can't tell you, Chair, is how many additional units that would provide because we don't have that information in front of us.
Thank you, Anne. I think it's a shame that we don't have that information. Councillor O'Leary, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to have a go at putting a proposal forward based on the West Dorset, Weymouth and Portland Local Plan of 2015. On page 104, under Affordable Housing Continued, House 1 III, so 3, Applicants seeking to justify a lower level of affordable housing provision will be expected to provide an assessment of viability. A lower level of provision will only be permitted if there are good reasons to bring the development forward and the assessment shows that it is not economically viable to make the minimum level of provision being sought. I would like to propose that this committee does not feel that lowering the percentage of affordable housing from 30% to 27.5% would make the development economically unviable, and therefore would like to recommend refusal based on that fact. Sorry.
I thought it would be me with the microphone. Thank you very much, Councillor O'Leary. I understand your feelings on this one. I'll just take Councillor Borden as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. Is it too late to ask a question? It is, okay, right.
Sorry, I did think you were about to second that. Lovely, thank you. You can ask a question, I believe, Councillor Borden, if you wish.
Okay, thank you. It was just to ask the officers what the material consideration would be in rejecting the proposal, please.
Can I just go back to Anne, please, on this one?
Chair, it's for members to make the recommendation for refusal and identify why they're making that recommendation for refusal, what the material considerations are and what policy, both in terms of they can consider the adopted local plan and obviously the MPPF.
Thank you. I think Councillor O'Leary did actually allude to planning policies in his proposal, which I feel is acceptable in this instance. I'm just looking at you for confirmation, Anne. Thank you. We have a proposer and a seconder on this. Any conditions that we need to look at, James?
No, there wouldn't be any conditions if we were refusing permission.
So, Chair, do you want me to... We've got a proposer and seconder, haven't we? Yes, you said. So do you want me to just sort of summarise a reason for refusal based on Councillor O'Leary's words? Because we just need something for the minutes based around that. So having regard to policy House 1 of the adopted local plan, specifically criteria 3, III, it is considered based on the information that's been submitted that requiring 30% affordable housing in accordance with the policy would not make the development economically unviable. Therefore, the proposal is contrary.
And we need to say and contributions.
And contribution, contrary to the adopted local plan.
Thank you for that, Anne. Are you happy with that, Councillor O'Leary?
Yeah, this is a lot simpler than it used to be. So yes, thank you. Very, very happy with that.
Okay, thank you. We have a proposal and a seconder. Could I please ask members, all those in favour, please raise your hands. And I believe that is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Sorry. Did Chris vote?
Oh, sorry. Yes, yes he did. Okay. So, in other words, that... Yeah, so the application has been refused. Thank you very much. And now move on to item 5B. Yes. We'll just wait for the members that were evicted to return. Thank you, Councillors Northam and Weller. Just for your information, the application was refused. We now move on to application 5B, which is P/HOU/2023/06594, which is 18 Osborne Road, Bridport, Dorset, DT6 3AN. And this one will be introduced by Katrina Trevitt. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I'm just struggling with the share button on the presentation currently. Apologies about that. Yes, this application relates to 18 Osborne Road in Bridport and seeks to erect a residential annex. Right, we're there now, I hope. Yes, there we go. Apologies. So this application seeks planning permission to erect a residential annex within the rear garden of number 18 Osborne Road. The application site is to the north of Downhall within the centre of Bridport on a residential road predominantly built out with bungalows. The application site is, the site for the proposed annex is within the rear kind of eastern corner of the back garden to the bungalow that is number 18. This is just indicating the neighbouring properties either side with comments having been received from number 16 Osborne Road. Here is the site plan for the proposed garden room. So it does seek to replace an existing summer house within the rear garden. Now, the oddity with this application is that, and you can see that quite clearly from this plan, is that historically this property has had a much larger garden than the rest of the properties that seem to be on this southeastern side of Osborne Road. It's actually been in existence for at least 20 years going by aerial photography. So it is the established garden of this property. When looking from the street scene, the proposed location of the annex will not actually be viewable. And here is just a photo of the rear garden with the summer house that's intended to be replaced by the proposed annex, which the proposed annex is approximately the size of a small double garage. As you can see here, another photograph of the site, that the boundaries are very well established. I mean, this clearly appears as rear residential garden in which the annex will be located. This is just looking towards the southern boundary, so towards the neighbour, number 16, who submitted comments with some concerns about impact on their neighbouring amenity. This is just looking at the change of levels. So this is looking at the host dwelling here, just to the front of where the proposed annex will go. And you can see that drop in levels, but also, again, that established planting around the boundaries. This is just a site section plan, just indicating that drop in levels also. Here's the proposed elevations of the proposed annex. It's modest, low, relatively well scaled, not overly significant in terms of the garden land that's actually pertaining to the host property. So therefore it's considered a subservient garden addition to this dwelling house. Here's just the proposed floor plan. And so the key considerations are the impact on the AONB and the conservation area. Now, the rear kind of extra garden bit of this application site does fall within the conservation area. And the main dwelling is actually within the DDB, but this kind of top half of the garden is actually outside of the DDB. However, I wanted to stress to members that there's policy that would support a proposed annex within the DDB, the defined development boundary, or outside of a defined development boundary under Policy House 6 of the adopted local plan. So the other issues relate to it being outside of the defined development boundary, although it's still supported by policy, and then the impact on neighbouring amenity. However, we consider that that's mitigated by the very well-established boundaries to the site, the fact that the applicant is willing to install obscure glazing in the northern window and the western window of the proposed annex, and the fact that levels are different. There's a significant distance between the annex and other properties, and just, you know, the level of screening and detachment, etc. We would also look to restrict the use of the annex, so it is ancillary to the original dwelling, to the main dwelling and the residential use. Just reflecting on that design, as I've said already, a relatively modest scaled proposal in keeping with materials and finishes in the area. In terms of the neighbouring amenity, as I've mentioned, well distanced, change of levels, well screened. And so here's just some more photos, just reflecting again on the further kind of screening of the boundaries, the southern boundary there, and again. And then this is looking at that northern boundary again, so the screening right next to it, and obviously where this summer house is where the annex is in looking to go. This just reflecting on this plan again. So where that star is, that kind of rear boundary line, what you would have expected the garden to finish at, that's what markers between the conservation area and the defined development boundary. So, and these are the views from number 16 Osborne Road, which was the neighbour that had raised concerns, but I think quite clearly you can see that there is established screening. They've got their own garden building marking the boundary here, and that distance and screening ensures that neighbouring amenity will be protected from the proposed annex. And this is just a photo from that northern property, number 20, again, just reflecting on the dense screening between this and the application site. So therefore, to conclude, we consider that the proposed design scale and appearance and obscurity from public visibility, including from the neighbouring gardens, means that visual impact is limited. We consider that there is no adverse impact on the wider conservation area. The proposal is well contained within that garden with no harm to the conservation area as a designated heritage asset, and that this actually conserves the preserves the conservation area, not resulting in harm. We don't consider there to be any adverse impact regarding neighbouring amenity, and the annex is supported by policy within that location. And therefore, we're looking to grant planning permission, or recommending the grant of planning permission subject to conditions which relate to the standard time limit, plans list, and ensuring the ancillary occupation of the proposed annex, and that those two windows that have been mentioned, or the windows that have been mentioned, are obscure glaze to relative obscurity level. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Katrina. Very concise. We have one speaker and one letter of objection that I will allow to be read out. So could you do that for me, please, Josh? Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. So this is a letter of objection from the neighbour who lives at number 16, Michael McCormick. The proposed residential building is situated at the bottom of our garden and will directly overlook the rear of our property, where our bedroom is situated. Ironically, the building was moved from its current position to directly behind our garden as it was deemed unacceptable, but now has been moved back again. Clearly, if it was considered unacceptable before it was moved, I struggle to understand how it has now become acceptable. I'm aware that frosted glass has been proposed, but this will not mitigate light pollution or reduce the possibility of noise. The Planning and Heritage Statement dated October 2023 clearly states in section 2.2 that the proposed building is not within the development boundary of Bridport. This part of the garden is also within the Bridport Conservation Area. Checking the planning portal, the applicants have submitted a number of previous applications at the property which would effectively create living space. These applications have been approved, thus raises the question as to why an additional building is now required to provide accommodation. Bridport Town Council rejected the scheme for a number of reasons, not least because it contravenes a number of local planning policies. Why would the council approve a scheme that is clearly in breach of the policies they mandated? Finally, our biggest concern is the potential to set an extremely unwelcome precedent with regard to building additional properties in the field behind properties in Osborne Road. I'm aware through that a number of planning applications have been made to build houses on this land, and allowing the building of this residence will lend weight to the argument that further development should be allowed.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Josh. And now we have a speaker, which is Robert Wright, the applicant. Robert, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. The application relates to erection of an annex in our back garden. Its purpose is to enable our 19-year-old autistic son to live semi-independently in the absence of Dorset being able to provide suitable residential accommodation in Bridport in any event he is not yet able to live apart from his family. On advice at the outset, we looked to keep our options open and extended the application to include commercial use, but given the objections received and reflecting that its sole purpose is for the benefit of our son, we are content to accept the proposed condition preventing commercial use. Accordingly, this application isn't about Airbnb. Our planning history discloses that we have investigated a loft conversion and redevelopment of the garage. The cost or resulting level of independence those options provide do not, however, make those workable solutions for us and our son. Objections refer to the fear of overlooking. The planning report refers to the annex being sited where a garden room is currently located. It is in fact a home office. It is fully glazed. It is used for a minimum of 5 days a week and has been in situ for over 7 years. With mature growth screening and boundary features, any overlooking of number 16 is limited to one small first floor window. To the extent that there will be any overlooking by the annex, with the agreed obscured glazing, it's believed it will be minimal and certainly not worse than currently applying in respect of the Home Office. There is concern along Osborne Road generally with regard to the possible development of the field to the rear of Osborne Road. Through quirk of development and historic ownership, a section of our garden on which we're looking to site the annex was previously part of that field. And the argument is that this application should be considered on the same planning basis as the backfield, and if planning is granted here, then that opens the floodgates there. The planning officer's report advises this application should not be decided on the same basis. The point here is that an aerial photo provided with the application, which wasn't the one shown today, which is undated, but from the cars looks like mid-1980s, shows that this section of the garden has been fully enclosed as a garden and separated from the backfield for many years. and indeed has housed various domestic building. It clearly shouldn't be treated in the same way in planning terms as the backfield and vice versa. Number 16's comments about the annex being sited at the back of their property related to when the initial objection came in against overlooking, we thought that a simple solution would be to provide it at the back of their property where the shed is, which you saw on the photo. But when the planning officer went to look at number 16's house and how it encroached there potentially, then it was moved back to... Okay, thank you, that's fine. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. Are there any relevant questions of a technical nature for the officer before we go to debate? Councillor Shortell.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may ask two questions of a technical nature. First of all, the footprint of the new building in relation to the existing building, is there much of a difference between the two? And it would have been nice really to see a plan with the existing footprint and overlaid with the new proposed dwelling, so that we could judge the difference ourselves. And the second question is that extension into the field on the land registry related to that particular property? Thank you, John.
I think the first question was covered in the officer's report, but maybe it wasn't clear. So I'll ask Katrina if she could do that one. And the second one, I wouldn't have a clue, but I'm sure we'll find out. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Shortell. So the existing garden room was approximately the size of a single garage, which was 18 square metres. And then this is now going to 33 square metres. So, yeah, but still smaller than the average double garage, which is obviously double the 18 square metres, which is the approximate size of a single garage as well. In terms of the land registry plan, no, we haven't had that confirmed by land registry about the field title, but we've obviously reviewed planning history and aerial photography. Whilst there isn't planning history for having established what is possibly an extension into the field at some point in time, obviously, I think, if we were considering that, the fact that we've got evidence that for the last 20 years, that would, in terms of photographical evidence and clear boundaries that are set, that would weigh heavily in any consideration of a lawful certificate should it be submitted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that okay, Councillor Shortell? Lovely, thank you. Councillor Borden, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry, I missed the guest's last comment. So I think my question is, what was the planning officer's recommendation on the potential loss of amenity? Because I missed the last comment that our guest made.
So, apologies. Do you mean loss of amenity in terms of the neighbouring impact, or okay? Because I think there have been a couple of iterations of the plans since submission, and I believe to appease the neighbours, to be fair, which was the reason for actually moving it to the eastern corner that it's now in. However, we consider that those boundaries are very well established. There's significant distance. There's a change in land topography and distance between the proposed annex and even the neighbouring dwellings, as well as the main dwelling, to protect neighbouring amenity.
Thank you very much, Councillor Borden. Any more questions of a technical nature before we move to debate? Councillor Kimber.
Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. My thoughts are and the technical question is, are we setting a precedent with this development if we allowed it?
In what respect, Councillor Kimber?
Well, I'm just thinking that possibly maybe other neighbours might be thinking of certain things along possibly the bottom of their garden as well. And I'm just wondering whether we would we would then, this could come up sort of a pepper pot. Thank you.
I think each one will be judged on its merits, to be honest, but I'll pass over to Katrina for that so she can correct me.
No, that's entirely right. Policy does support extensions to dwellings. A garden building or annex is seen as an extension to a dwelling, you know, and that's what's been applied for here. Each case is on its own merits. Each case would have to be considered potentially by the local planning authority. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina. I think we may need to, I'm sorry to say this, it looks like we may have to pause again because it's very difficult to concentrate with the background noise. I've just been told they should be stopping soon, whether that's something we need to... are members happy if we continue, or would you like to adjourn for 10 minutes? Okay. Okay, we'll continue to go for it then. Thank you. Councillor Kimber, were you okay with that explanation? Thank you. Councillor Monks, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Councillor Kimber, ordinarily I would have similar concerns because we have similar plans in Bedminster. But my attention is drawn to the report, and that in the conclusion it suggests that the proposal is just to comply with the policies of Bridport Neighbourhood Plan. And I think the officer covered that in the initial report. So on that basis, I would be happy to support this because it is within the plan. But I do note Bridport Council's concerns.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Monks. I think you slightly jumped ahead there, but we're still on the technical questions, if there are any, before we move to debate. Everybody happy with where we are on that, or do you want to ask any more technical questions? No? Okay, I'll open the floor to debate then, please. Who would like to commence? It must be the new chair that's frightening everybody. That's all I can think of. I've never known a planning committee so quiet. Perhaps Councillor Shortell would like to say something then, if he knows. Councillor Weller, please.
Just so that you don't feel lonely up there, Chairman. 16.8, the Town Council state that the building is intended as holiday accommodation, which contradicts the claims that it's residential extension. The applicant says that it is has now made the comment that it's quite explicitly for his son. I don't know whether, I mean, that's clearly the case now. Are we in a position where we can say that should that circumstance change, it has to come back to us? Is there a condition we can make on that? Because I'd feel more comfortable about that. I know that we, all of us, because we live in such a lovely county, we, all of us, are being confronted with people who are thinking, actually, my garage could become a self-contained flat for Airbnb, and I might like to do that. Particularly as we get older, it's quite nice to preserve our incomes, isn't it? So I'd like to know whether that condition is possible. I'm not doubting the applicant's intention now, but in 20 years' time, something might be entirely different, or even 10 years' time. So I just wonder about that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Well, I believe the condition that was put forward to keep this to family use only would cover that one, but I'll pass over to Katrina. Sorry, I shouldn't be trying to do your job for you.
You're welcome to. I think it does come back to this concern over Airbnb, which is a general kind of concern over the council area, I think, at the current time. We do know of COGS working in terms of potential policy or that was mooted about short-term holiday lets. So that is in the, and that kind of relates to similar concerns. What I would say is that the ancillary condition does protect that the annex will be used as ancillary to the main dwelling. Should there be some holiday use, which is then considered to be a material change of use, that is then when the council can consider if actually a holiday let has been created in the rear garden. However, we have to consider what's before us, which is for an ancillary annex. Thank you.
Thank you. You happy with that, Councillor Weller? And I think there was Councillor Monks, was it? Yeah, Councillor Monks, please.
Thank you, Chair. Really, it's just to follow on to my point that was in the wrong part of the meeting. But for me, this report is fairly clear and it follows the framework that we should be considering. I think the report from the office is a very good report. I do note Bridport Town Council's concerns, but we can't help but not take any note of their own neighbourhood plan, and that plan supports this application. So for me, it's a fairly clear-cut one, and I think the recommendations cover any concerns that residents or council may well have. So I'm very happy with this report.
Councillor Monks, is that a proposal? And if so, does it include the conditions proposed? Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to propose and accept the recommendations of the report.
Seconder, please. I think Councillor O'Leary at the back had his hand up, so we'll take that as seconded. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. So that's approved. Thank you. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll now move on to item 5C, which is P/LBC/2024/001189 Weymouth Seafront, the Esplanade Weymouth, introduced by Nicola Yates. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello. Okay. This application is for the installation of 6 downlighters to each of the 7 Victorian shelters along the Esplanade. This application has been brought to Planning Committee as the buildings to which the application relates are owned by Dorset Council. I have received a late representation from Weymouth Civic Society who object to the application, noting concerns regarding the impact on historic fabric and the proposal being out of place. They have given a suggestion to a trial on one of the shelters first. That representation was only received this morning. Right. The application sites are the 7 seafront shelters along the promenade to the east of the Esplanade, highlighted in red on these site location plans. Each of the shelters have an individual Grade 2 listing and are located within the Weymouth Town Centre conservation area. The seafront shelters are examples of late Victorian cast iron technology with overhanging roofs and glazed screens to provide shelter from inclement weather. The significance of these shelters is derived from their architectural, historical and group value, and the shelters make a positive contribution to the seafront scene and the wider conservation area. The proposal seeks to install downlighters within each of the 7 seafront shelters, with the aim to enhance the use of these seating areas, especially during the evenings. As noted within the submitted planning and heritage statement, uplighters were previously installed within the pavement around the shelters, However, these are now no longer functioning. As further noted within the statement and discussed during the pre-application meeting, the replacement of the existing uplighters and their underground wiring is not considered to be practical. The logistics surrounding the replacement of the existing separate cable runs is considered by the applicant to be problematic in terms of their repair and future maintenance. Therefore, the proposed downlighters would be located within the existing ceiling of the shelters, with a total of 6 downlighters per shelter. The existing ceilings have a flat finish and are painted white, and the proposed downlighters would be flush fitting and white in colour. Each set of downlighters would have a single cable run from the nearest supply point and would have a concealed cable run discreetly concealed as per the conduit detail shown, and this would lead into the ceiling void. The key points: it is considered that the proposed location, design and colour of the downlighters would enable a discreet addition and is considered to avoid any harmful visual impact on the setting of the listing structures and the wider conservation area. The proposed downlighters and cable run would cause harm to the historic fabric of the shelters. However, it is concluded that this would be less than substantial harm. The proposals would improve lighting for the shelters and the wider promenade, particularly during the evenings, enhancing the appearance and encouraging the use of these facilities. Therefore, it is concluded that the less than substantial harm identified would be offset by the wider public benefit of the proposal. Oh, sorry, my slides won't move across. That's come up. Okay. My apologies. So it has been concluded that the proposal would not be detrimental to the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings and the Weymouth Town Centre Conservation Area. And furthermore, it is concluded that the proposal would cause less than substantial harm to the listed shelters. However, this level of harm would be offset by the wider public benefit, complying with planning policy. Therefore, we are looking to grant approval subject to conditions, which would be the standard commence within 3 years and in accordance with the approved plans. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just before we go into members for technical questions, I had an update sheet this morning that says, regarding this application, that on page 66, under the section regarding the emerging local plan, a paragraph has been erroneously included, which is regarding the 5-year housing land supply position. It should be noted that this is of no relevance to the consideration and determination of this application for listed building consent. So if members could please bear that in mind. Thank you very much. And I now move to any technical questions for the officer. It appears there are none, which is always a good sign. Was that to get in first for the debate, Councillor Weller? Okay, that's lovely, thank you. I'll open the floor to debate then, please.
Thank you very much. As a little bit of background, and you can imagine at my great age, I have a lot of background on these shelters. Before the lights set into the prom, there were lights in the ceilings of these buildings, and therefore the idea that we're breaking, making a new precedent is wrong. There were downlighters. They weren't called downlighters in 1950, but they were lights. One of the reasons that the lights were put in the prom back ready for, it was to the seafront regeneration, ready for the Olympics. Remember those? It was seen that it would be a better idea, it would be less intrusive. Drug dealers, drug users would like the area less if it was nice and dingy, or rather, they would like it less, and it would discourage drug users. But in fact, current feeling is that drug users don't like good lighting because they can be seen. They already know where their arms are. They don't need light to find them. So having the shelters well lit is actually a deterrent to ne'er-do-wells using the shelters, which is one of the things we want to achieve. One of the problems with the downlighters is that whatever we do, the nature of the prom is that if the lights are in the ground, they flood. And surprise, surprise, it corrodes, and they're constantly needing replacing. So that's why we want to lift them out from the prom onto the ceiling. And as I say, there's no precedent that says, we shouldn't have top lights, because we had top lights when I was a child. They were always lit that way. I think it will enhance the area enormously. It will increase the use, because they'll be well lit. It will increase the use of legitimate use for the shelters. I think it will greatly enhance the prom to do it. And I would like to propose approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Leary, please.
I'm happy to second that proposal, Chairman.
Thank you. I have a proposer and a seconder. Is there anybody else like to speak on this one? In that case, show of hands, please. All those in favour? All but one, I believe. Although abstaining. Please, could you please note that, Josh? Thank you. In that case, the officer's report is approved. We're for it. Thank you. Okay, we're now moving on to 5D. And I think it's you again, isn't it? Yeah. I think that's why I was confused twice. Okay, Nicola, over to you, please. PLBC/2024/01599, 9 The Esplanade, Weymouth. Again, I think on the update sheet, there was the same comment as I had read out previously. It says on page 75, under the section regarding the emerging local plan, a paragraph has been erroneously included regarding the 5-year housing land supply position. It should be noted that this is of no relevance to the consideration and determination of this application for listed building consent. So, Nicola, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is to modify the internal basement layout with the relocation of a bathroom and a kitchen, creating a utility and laundrette, and creating access through a doorway to a coal shed from the kitchenette, with associated changes to electrical lines and water pipes. This application has been brought to Planning Committee as the building to which the application relates is owned by Dorset Council. Number 9, Esplanade, is currently the Warwick Guest House and is Grade 2 star listed, a group listing with number 7 to number 12. The property sits in a prominent position fronting Weymouth Bay and with Weymouth Harbour to the rear. The properties within this terrace have architectural significance with Georgian architectural detailing. Furthermore, the properties have historical significance And as noted within the listing description, the terrace, in conjunction with the neighbouring Devonshire buildings, provides a worthy starting group for the long esplanade stretching to the north. The site is located within the Weymouth Town Centre Conservation Area. Number 9 is a mid-terrace 3-storey property with a lower ground floor and attic space. Immediately to the rear of the property is a 2-storey gable extension, a single-storey lean-to store and a courtyard. The proposal seeks to modify the internal lower ground floor layout by relocating the bathroom and kitchen and creating a utility and a doorway access to the coal shed. The proposal includes changes to the electricity and water services. The lower ground floor of number 9 is currently occupied as private accommodation for the guest house owners. And the proposal seeks to relocate the existing bathroom from the rear of the building to the front of the building in a space currently used for storage. The proposal would not see the alterations to any walls or doors, but would require the addition of sanitary ware and associated services. The proposed new bathroom would not have a window, however, this is not uncommon, and there is an existing vent above the door. Further ventilation would be via a dehumidifier. If, in the course of the works, it is considered that further ventilation is required, and this would involve any vents or flues on the external walls, a further application would be required, and this has been added to the conditions at the end of this report. The proposal would then seek to relocate the existing kitchen into the space freed up by the bathroom. And again, this would not see the alterations of any walls or doors, and the existing services would be adapted to facilitate the new fittings. Once the kitchen is relocated, the proposal seeks to use the existing kitchen space as a utility, which would support the running of the guest house business. This space has access to the rear courtyard and therefore would allow a smoother operation with regards to rubbish removal, storage of items for the guest house and deliveries. To the rear of the building, there is a single-storey lean-to coal shed, which is currently accessed from the courtyard. Internally, there is a modern partition wall which separates the coal shed from the kitchen, and the proposal seeks to remove this wall, allowing the coal shed space to be accessed from within the building. As shown on the submitted proposed floor plan, a doorway is to be reinstated from the utility to the coal shed. And the proposal would not see any external alterations, with the existing door in the courtyard remaining in situ. The key points: the proposal would not see the loss of any historic fabric, nor any alterations to the walls or doors. And the proposed works are internal and therefore not visible from the neighbouring listed buildings nor the conservation area. It has been concluded that the proposal would not have an adverse impact on the significance of this Grade 2 listed building, the setting of the neighbouring listed buildings, and the Weymouth Town Centre Conservation Area, complying with planning policy. We are therefore looking to grant approval subject to conditions being the commencement within 3 years and accordance with the approved plans. An informative would be added regarding any vents or flues requiring further listed building consent and planning permission if necessary. Thank you, Chair. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Nicola. There aren't any speakers, so as usual, are there any relevant questions of a technical nature for the officer before we go to debate? Councillor Chotel.
I just wanted to ask about the retained door to the rear. That is going to be retained cosmetically only, and therefore has no functionality as a door. Is that correct?
The rear door would still be in use. It would be access from the utility room to the courtyard.
Thank you. Happy with that, Councillor Chotel? Any more technical questions? If not, I'll open the floor to debate, please. Who would like to start? Councillor O'Leary.
I'd like to recommend approval, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. And Councillor Weller? Councillor Weller has seconded the proposal. It's a very quick one, this one. So all those in favour, please, show of hands. Against? And abstains? Councillor Northam has abstained. Thank you very much. In that case, this application is approved. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 5E, which is P/FUL/2024/01216, Charmouth Road Car Park, Charmouth Road, Lyme Regis. And that's introduced by Rob Piggott, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the application before committee today is for the erection of a 15-metre mast for CCTV purposes. The applicant is Lyme Regis Town Council, and it comes before committee because the development is on Dorset Council-owned land. So the location of the mast would be in the Charmouth Road car park, which is in the eastern extent of Lyme Regis, and the mast location itself would be within the skate park, the northwestern corner of the skate park, which is in the northeastern corner of the car park itself. For context, there is an aerial image of the car park with the skate park in the top corner and a red square indicating the location of the mast itself. I'll just provide a few more images for context. The skate park itself, viewing toward the south, when viewed from the when viewed from the south, and the strip of land along the western side of the skate park would be utilised, well, essentially would be free for the maintenance of the mast, and I'll go into that in more detail. The mast itself is 15 metres and offers a tilt facility to enable maintenance on a winch cable, hence the location of the mast in this location so that it can be essentially dropped for maintenance. The further detail on the winch itself, as you'll see, there's a little cable and a handle for lowering the mast itself. And there again is a contextual image of where the mast would be located. Key constraints for the site, Dorset National Landscape, it's in a slope instability zone, there is risk of surface water flooding. The area is covered by a monument designation, and of course the land is Dorset Council owned. So key issues that have been considered, principle of development is acceptable within SUS2 policy. It's within an existing car park and skate park within Lyme Regis Town. The scale and design is considered acceptable within a functional infrastructural setting of a car park and skate park with a football club to the north and allotments to the east. There was comments made about the height, and we have considered that, and the applicant has confirmed that the mast is required to be 15 metres so that it will essentially send a transmission to the nearest CCTV camera mast, which is in Lyme Regis Town. So further detail, the landscape, the heritage assessment, sort of archaeological assessment was undertaken by the council's archaeologist, and it was found that there would be no significant impact to the designation given the car park, which already sits on top of the designation, and for the fact that it is a minor development. and that was the historic designation for that site was a drainage system, as I understand it. So coastal erosion was also considered acceptable given the scale of development. A small concrete square would enable, essentially it would be sat on a slab 2 metres wide by 1 metre long and 1 metre deep. So having low impact to the surrounding area. The nearest residential property is some 95 metres away to the southwest, as I understand it, so there will be limited impact and flood risk being low given the scale of the development. Lastly, in terms of highway, there is, in safety, there is a steel barrier fence which runs along the side of the skate park, limiting any impact. And it wouldn't be, obviously, in the car park itself. So therefore, the recommendation is to approve based on the fact that it would be acceptable in amenity terms, both visual and residential, would have no impact on highway safety, public safety, or the heritage designation or highway, safety, and therefore subject to standard conditions of 3 years and in accordance with the approved plans. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the officer? Very quiet committee. In that case, the floor is open to debate. Would anybody like to start? Councillor Borden first, please, followed by Councillor Northam.
Thank you, Chairman. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth Ward. I'm fully in favour of this. I'm surprised that there was no comment from the Town Council Planning Committee because they have actually discussed it in detail and suspect it may be a timing issue because I think the meeting was only last week. So perhaps they haven't sent it in yet, but they are fully in favour, as am I. We've had a number of CCTV cameras being set up at different locations in the town. This is one of the last ones because it required planning permission because it's on Dorset Council land. And the football club, the allotments, which are just sort of up in the corner, you couldn't see on the photograph, but and the car park itself have suffered vandalism and problems. So everybody involved is very keen for the cameras to be there, and so I'm fully in favour of it. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak, but I would be happy to propose recommendation.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Borden. So there's a proposal including the conditions. Thank you. Councillor Northam was next, followed by Councillor Kimber, and then Councillor Weller. So Councillor Northam, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to propose, but I'm happy to second. I think it's a good report, a good submission and a good report by the officer on the submission. So I see no reason not to approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Northam. Councillor Kimber. Councillor Kimber was going to second, so I'll move across to Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to thank Councillor Borden for telling us that the Lyme Regis Council, clearly since they're dealing with it, were in favour, because I'd just like to state that personally I find it very, very useful when we do know what the local town council feel about an application. And the reason I want to say that is that sometimes people who are town councillors think, is there any point, because we're only a consultee? But those of us on this committee would like, I think, for town councillors to know the weight that we do hold in their opinion, because they're on the ground and they know the area. And it really is important that we do know what town councils think on applications.
Thank you very much, Councillor Weller. We have a proposal and a seconder. Okay, Councillor Borden, you may speak.
Thank you. It was just to add that the Skate Park Committee has actually donated a substantial amount of money towards this project because it's going to be linked up to the police cameras, and so everybody surrounding it, as well as the town council, as well as myself. I didn't comment because unfortunately I've been ill the last few weeks, but we're all in favour.
Lovely, thank you. That's informative. So with a proposal and a seconder, can we please go to the vote? All those in favour, please. That's lovely. This is definitely unanimous. Thank you very much. In that case, this application is approved. Right, we'll now move on to item 5F on the agenda, which is P/ADV/2024/01585, fence on land running adjacent to the entrance to Bradford's Building Supplies, Sea Road South, Bridport, DT6 3DW. Melplash? In that case, over to Rob Piggott, please, who's going to introduce this one.
Thank you, Chair. So the application before committee today is for the erection of a non-illuminated vinyl banner on a hardback board at the entrance to Bradford's Building Supply on the A35, also known as Sea Road South. The application is before committee as the land is Dorset Council owned. So the applicant, is the fitness centre in Bridport. I'll just put the application site is here at the entrance of Bradford's, and a slightly zoomed in picture to provide a bit of context. It's on the corner of the entrance with the A35 running north to south. For aerial view and context, and there again is the development. Photo of the site, of the fence railings that it would be fixed to. View from the south to the north along the A35. Views from the north to the south, and the banner would be located on these railings here. And I'll go into the key constraints for the site. It's within the Dorset National Landscape, within the DDB for Bridport, within the neighbourhood plan area, and as noted, the land is Dorset Council owned. For details on the advertising banner, 4 metres by 1 metre, the banner, and that is in fact the banner advertising, well, their offering and how to access their facilities from the roundabout, which follows on from the advert location. So in terms of the assessment of this application, being advertising consent, we're only assessing visual and residential amenity and highway and public safety. In terms of residential and visual amenity, it was considered that it would be appropriate in this location. There are a number of other advertising banners along the stretch of the A35. And obviously with it being vinyl, non-illuminated and static, there is no sort of issue with it being prominent within the street scene itself. In terms of residential amenity, for the same reasons, it would have limited impact. Neighbouring properties to the east wouldn't be affected. There's a boundary treatment along the other side of the A35, and as I noted, it's non-illuminated. In terms of highway safety, both Dorset Council Highways and National Highways have been consulted, neither of which have objections, given that it would not pose a road safety hazard. And also given the height, it wouldn't pose an issue regarding public safety. In those terms, then, the application is recommended for approval, based that it would be acceptable in amenity and safety terms, and that it be subject to standard advertising conditions associated with it being removed when no longer in use and non-illuminated, static, not a distraction, and that's it, I think, and the relevant consent is sought from the landowner, which in this case is Dorset Council. And that's my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Rob. Any questions of a technical nature to the officer, please? No? Okay, that's fine. In that case, I'll open the floor to debate. Councillor O'Leary.
I would like to propose accepting the recommendation.
Thank you. I'm not sure who was first there, Chris. Councillor Shortell, I believe. You wish to speak?
I don't wish to speak, but I would love to second the proposition. Okay, all right. Well, question of priority.
We have a proposer and a seconder. Is there any member that wishes to speak on this? Councillor Borden?
It was only really to, it was only really to say, as a regular user of Bridport Leisure Centre, both when my children were little and now with my grandson, the excellent gym tots, I would be in favour of supporting this.
That's lovely, thank you. Okay, if nobody else wishes to speak, can we have a show of hands, please? If you're all those in favour? I think that's unanimous again. Then this application is approved. Thank you. We now move on to item 5G, which is P/FUL/0203/024929, part of Toot Quarry, Prior Road, Portland, introduced by Rob Parr. Thank you, Rob.
I've got some.
Lovely, thank you. I just want to note that Councillor Kimber is moved across to the public speaking area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I think we're okay now. Apologies, just bear with me while I share my screen. There we go. Okay, Chairman. So, yes, today I'm bringing forward an application at the Tout Quarry in Portland. The application is made by the Portland Sculpture and Quarry Trust, and it's for the enhancement of existing aggregates pathway in the Tout Quarry Sculpture Park and Nature Reserve with geological interpretation spaces, the erection of Portland and the erection of a Portland stone archway, which is relocated from a Grade 2 listed building, 81 Fleet Street, London. I will just add, this application is being brought before members as Dorset Council owns parts of the application site in the sort of north and south of it. So just to provide some context, the application site is located at the northwest end of Portland, at the top of the West Cliff Escarpment, as sort of shown by this the star on the screen there. Here we see the application site. I will say that a lot of this application site, the southern part, is really just an access track to the highway. The actual development area is more in this northern part of it. To provide some context here, we've got an aerial photograph of the development area. At the north here, you've got this sort of circular area, which is where there's an existing stone circle called the memory stones. and then you have this footpath which leads down through the site into lower ground. So the proposed development is split into 7 sort of themed areas. So you have area 1 at the north of the site, close to the memory stones, and then running through areas 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 at the bottom, which is where the archway would be located. There we go. So I'll just take you quickly through each area and what's proposed. So each area is sort of themed, and this is all around the sort of geology and history of the site. And so area 1 is themed gullies and stromatolites, hopefully I've said that correctly, would include an interpretation board, the clearance of brambles, and a sculpture to depict the strata of time. And here we've just got a photograph of the area where that would be located. As you can see, it's covered in scrub, etc. at the moment, with the footpath on the left. So moving quickly forward, we have area 2, which is themed as slat/lagoon environments, and that would include clearance of buddleia, cotoneaster, brambles, so some sort of invasive species, stone seating for visitors, to create a sort of an outdoor learning space where group talks could take place, and there would be a dragonfly sculpture in that area as well. And again, here we have a photograph of the area at the moment. Areas 3 and 4 themed around stone river, trees and rivers. So area 3 would depict an example of a fossilised stone river. In area 4, there's an existing interpretation stone, and that would be replaced by a World Heritage example showing the inside of a tree, or the tree bowl, I think it's called. And here we have a picture of the site. This is the existing interpretation, which is sort of looks a bit overgrown at the moment. Areas 5 and 6, as you move through the site, area 5 would include some sort of dinosaur footprints, examples of rivers, and examples of salt pseudomorphs, which would square crystals formed when salt water dries out, apparently. So you sort of see those. And then area 6 would be the reinstatement of some artifacts, so sort of historical tools, equipment, that sort of thing, with historical importance from Portland Quarry's heritage. There'd be some more stone seating, some in the form of square blocks and some in the form of a curved stone seat. And there would be some ammonites cast or set into the ground there. And then finally, and there's a picture of the actual site of that area there. And then finally, at the bottom of the path, by the junction, would be the relocated arch from 81 Fleet Street. And I thought I'd throw up a picture of the archway when existing at 81 Fleet Street, sort of there, and then here's some of the reclaimed parts of the building in the quarry at the moment. It's important to say that 81 Fleet Street doesn't exist anymore. That building's been completely removed. And then here we have an elevation and a plan view at the bottom of the proposed reconstructed arch. It's a fairly sizable structure, be over 7 metres in height, and I think approximately 6 metres in width. So the key planning issues, the principle of the proposed development is accepted as it represents tourist, education, training, recreational, leisure-related development. The impact on the character area, we consider it would be in keeping. This is all Portland stone, so reusing Portland stone, and the landscaping, if you like, would be in keeping with the sort of the limestone grassland of the area. Highway safety, there'd be no significant adverse impacts on highway or traffic movement. No significant adverse impact on wildlife and habitat. We have a net approved biodiversity plan for the proposal. No significant adverse harm on archaeology. Obviously, this is a sort of fairly quarried site already. There is a small section of contaminated land, but that's actually outside the development area, so that wouldn't represent any acceptable risk. And we don't consider there would be any amenity impact. This development is well away from any residential properties. And all the issues raised have been satisfactorily addressed in the report. So my recommendation is to grant planning approval subject to conditions, with conditions on commencement, approved plans, requirement for a construction management plan to be agreed prior to commencement. So obviously there's some big pieces of stone to be moved around, so we need to make sure that all happens safely. The work's carried out to the biodiversity plan, and that in addition, any scrub clearance is carried outside of bird nesting period, and then informatives related to MPPF and contacting highways prior to commencement. Thank you, Chair. That is the end of my report.
Thank you, Rob. It's usually the chair that does that. Right, we have two speakers on this one. We have Councillor Kimber, who will have 3 minutes, after which he will have to leave the room. And then we have Hannah Sofair, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Kimber.
Are you happy for me to stay seated? Fellow councillors, 81 Fleet Street is coming back to Portland, and the first time in my memory is stone has left Portland by the lorry load each day, as you would expect, building iconic buildings all over the country and all over the world. I would say this building is coming back to Portland. Now, 81. Now, if you drive onto Portland, you'll come up past the Memory Stones. Already, the Portland Quarry Trust, which undertake this project, this has been very, very significantly popular with visitors, people asking about the stone circles, what it's all about, and I would say the Portland Quarry Trust has delivered on everything that they've ever done, and I've been particularly keen to support them. And this is why I'm not taking part today. I feel as the ward councillor for Portland and the town councillor for the east side, I can't stay if I on this one neutral, but I do urge you to support this. I've said about the 12 memory stones, and I understand Anthony Gormley is also very much in support. And I want to say with the Portland Quarry Trust, it's actually safeguarding the skills of Portland and clearly showing our heritage at times. Thank you. That's enough from me, Chair. Thank you. And please support.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. You may stay until the applicant is finished speaking, if that's fine, and then leave the room. So Hannah Sofair, please.
Thank you for that. I'm a creative director at Portland Sculpture and Quarry Trust. I've been with the project over 40 years, and we've run full-time education across Dorset for underprivileged people, mental health groups, with youth with really challenging behaviour. And we've transformed people's lives. We've given them new opportunities, we've given them employment and better future for them. So I've got, over those years, we've also saved Talc Quarry, obviously, 1983 through, I was one of over 50 artists that were making work. I'm from the Royal College of Art. And we brought professional thinking back to the landscape, the London-Portland connection, which is really integral to why its heritage is so valuable. And we've made connections with St Paul's Cathedral and the Dean there, who has invited Portland down to connect with its heritage. So this connection is really, really important. The last generation of quarrymen, stonemasons that work by hand, have now on the diminishing very, very quickly. So we've kept a living land archive. This living land archive records the geology, ecology, and the human, and people like Gormley talking about why they made work and put back something to Talc Quarry. Talc Quarry had mineral excavation a year before Jonathan Phipps began the project. He was a local resident, but also worked for Waddington's Cork Street Gallery. He was a Fleet Air pilot, so it was his concept. I was just one of over 50 artists that continued with the project, and Gormley as well, and other artists. We gave back to the landscape through making work, and we negotiated the lease with Hanson to save the quarry from further mineral extraction. This quarry is unique. It has been worked by hand and it's been stacked. Its boulders, we've recorded the ecology, we've kept a record of the geology of the whole island. And this is really, really important to this pathway that's outside of the SSSI. The pathway, the Green Corridor, will be brilliant to do. It's small spaces that can give learning outcomes and apprenticeship training skills through our connections to the Worshipful Company of Masons, who are ready to support their training as well. So we have really good background, and we've been working with Professor Brunston, who led the World Heritage Coast. So this is important to Dorset. This is important to the history of geology on this island. Okay.
That was lovely. Thank you very much. A really exciting project, I think. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the officer before we go to debate? Yes. Yeah, sorry. Yes, Councillor Roper.
Okay, thank you. It's really. Oh, sorry, Pete Roper, a ward councillor for Dorset Council. It's really nice to see this structure sort of being returned to Portland in time for its 100th anniversary, which I understand it is. I do have a technical question regarding the stability of the archway. It's quite a high structure. And also the land on the west side of the island is on the move. There is elements of sort of subsidence, and I'm just wondering if there will be sort of regular checks of the sort of structure to make sure that there won't be any safety issues for people in the area.
Thank you. Could I pass that over to the officer, please, for comment?
Thank you, Chair. The structural stability, if you like, is not really considered a planning consideration. It's something that's covered by the other legislation. However, we do understand that the applicants have been working with structural engineers, and so the way this is built, it should, there's an expectation that there are experts involved with actually ensuring this is a structurally sound building. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You're happy with that, Councillor Roper? Any more questions of a technical nature? If not, I shall move to the debate. No? Okay, the floor is open for debate, please. Councillor O'Leary, followed by Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to recommend the, I'd like to propose the recommendation for approval, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary, and Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm very happy to second this. I'd like to add, first of all, I'm really grateful to know that structural engineers are involved, as I'm sure everyone is. And I'd just like to add, I've worked with Hannah over many years and to congratulate her on the work that she's done at Tyke Quarry. Anyone who doesn't know or hasn't visited Tyke Quarry, you really should. And if you've got grandchildren, you absolutely should, because you can keep them busy for days. You can even lose them if you want to, which is even better. But it is you see, you're already looking at me as though that's tempting. It's a wonderful resource for Portland and for the whole county, and it really does show the history of this part of Dorset and its impact worldwide. So I strongly recommend this. Can't recommend it enough, and I can't congratulate Hannah, the Trust, and all the team that work there for the work that they do there. It is quite splendid.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Councillor Northam, please.
Thank you. I again like to commend the Trust for the work that they've done. Been a regular visitor to the site, dog walking pleasure, but also children walking and mine are old children. It's always a delight there, and I think this will truly enhance the site and give a view as to what Portland Stone ends up looking like. And that's a really nice feature of it. A comment, also, it's really nice walking through the sculpture park. It's got a number of specialist butterflies that frequent the area. And I'd just make a little comment about removal of scrub. There's enough scrub there probably that it doesn't matter, but scrub is quite important, but I'm sure you're all too aware of that, and I note there's a biodiversity plan that has to be produced, so I'm very happy with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Northam. Going back to the proposer, are you proposing that we grant subject to the conditions as per the officer's report, Councillor O'Leary?
Yes, Chairman. Very happy with that. Thank you.
And Councillor Weller, a seconder? Lovely, thank you. So all those in favour, please. That is again carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 6 on the agenda, urgent items. There are no urgent items, I believe. And item 7, exempt business. There is no exempt business. So therefore the meeting is closed at, the time is 12:33. Thank you. And thank you all for putting up with me for my first time. Cheers.